psychoanalysts of all time, who was in partnerships for quite a while with Sigmund Freud. And we're going to talk this evening about his remarks concerning understanding yourself. And that's a job in itself. But before I get started with it, Albert gave me a little note with a statement that was written by Carl Jung, and it says, "The psyche is not of today. Its ancestry goes back many millions of years." That's talking about you, your personality, your being. The psyche is not of today. Its ancestry goes back many millions of years. Individual consciousness is only the flower and fruit of a season, sprung from the perennial root beneath the earth. It's beautiful. I would have loved to have met him. He's another one on my list that if they ever allow in the, what they call sweet by and by, people I want to meet. I want to meet Jesus. I want to meet Buddha. I want to meet Krishna and Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell, among others, just to be able to sit down and say, boy, you guys really helped me out. I mean, they have a lot of good material. I get all the credit for this stuff, and actually, you know, I'm just relaying what these people said. But if I have an ability to share in a way that you can understand things and makes it easier for you to comprehend your, position here, then so be it. But Carl Jung, and his name, incidentally, was spelled J-U-N-G. It's pronounced Jung. What is he, German, Swedish, or Swedish, okay? He found an answer about you and me that has revolutionized thinking and about the identity of life. Now, we're talking not about a preacher or a minister. We're not talking about somebody that writes in a New Age magazine. We're talking not even about a psychiatrist or a psychoanalyst. We're talking about the premier psychoanalyst, along with Sigmund Freud. There was three: Adler, Jung, and Freud. And we're talking about Carl Jung. So we're talking about one of the preeminent psychoanalysts, a man who knew intimately the workings of what goes here between your ears. And what he said was that your psyche is not simply a mere interaction of a biochemical process. In other words, if you opened up, if you could take your skull and opened it up, and it wouldn't be that pretty, but anyhow, you would see all of these various protoplasms, and if you could get further into it, the movement of canals, of electrical wiring, and so forth and so on. It just means nothing. The blob or something. What does it mean? What does it do? What is it? But in all of that, he says there's more to you than that. Now, let's approach him, and let's take him at more than just casual, okay, yeah, sure, I believe that. We're not talking, as I said, about a religious person. He said there is a connection between the psychic. Now, what does psychic mean? Okay? Psychic. It means sensitive. Sensitive to what? Sensitive to the supernatural. Or supernormal. See, that's what psychic means. It means being sensitive to the supernatural. If you are, God forbid, they would never use this word in these churches, but what religious people dream of being is psychic. But if you tell them they're psychic, they say, oh, no, God, I'm not into that stuff. But yes, because psychic means being sensitive to the supernatural or the supernormal. Since everything is natural, supernatural is kind of a difficult word, but supernormal, supernatural. Let's use it for tonight without splitting hairs. But that's what psychic means. Say, all of a sudden, or not all of a sudden necessarily, but you have a sensitivity to something above and beyond that which is in the normal, run-of-the-mill thing that you're able to come to. So he suggests there is a connection between the psychic and the physical. So that's interesting. He's saying there is a connection between the psychic and the physical, between the sensitivity to something above normal and your body. There's a connection. And he also said it is a good idea to kind of approach that quietly and slowly. But now here is a reason. Listen to Carl Jung, and here's a statement that he makes, and the statement that he's about to make is the reason you're sitting in this room and that you are sitting and watching this on television. He says, to assess psychic phenomena, we have to open ourselves to all other phenomena that come with it. You can't just say, I want to be holy and find God. Because if you really go looking for God, you are going to go flying through a whole bunch of celestial things and unusual things that are part of the makeup of the universe. And he says, you're going to do that. We just want, see, basically that's where religion gets in an awful lot of trouble. They'll sing, oh, come, Holy Spirit. And when the Holy Spirit comes, they run like out the side door. It's a cult. Get me out of here. So you can't pray for it to come. And then when it comes, you say, it's a cult. I'm afraid of it. I don't want to touch. Don't get involved with those people. Accordingly, according to Jung, you can no longer practice psychology that ignores the existence of the unconscious or of parapsychology. Parapsychology is the study of the supernatural. That's what parapsychology means. So what Carl Jung said, if you are going to study psychology, if you want to study the inner workings of why you do the things that you do, then you cannot study that unless you are willing also to start thinking about the unconscious and that which is parapsychology, or that which is the study of the supernatural. So in other words, when Jesus Christ comes up in Luke 17:21 and makes the statement, the kingdom of God is within you, you should study what the heck does he mean by that? Has anybody, let me ask you a question. Many of you have gone to church before, different churches. You've gone into Bibles, you've studied different things. How many people have ever said to you, you should think, what does that mean? The kingdom of God is within you. Think of that for just a minute. Now, Carl Jung is saying you should really get into that and stay with that until you know what that means. That's a significant statement. The kingdom of God. Do you know, the universal celestial kingdom of the creator of the entire cosmos is inside of you. Now, you shouldn't just read that and say, oh, the kingdom of God is within you. Now read another verse, brother. Now, that's what they do. That's no good. What does it mean? Because if you really think of what it means, Jung is saying that what he is referring to is parapsychology, that which is, quote-unquote, the supernatural, that which is, quote-unquote, contained in the unconscious, that dwelling place within you where you normally don't get to go. In fact, you can't go with your mind. So Jung says psychology without the study or the understanding of the supernatural is wrong. See, this sets him far apart from all psychoanalysts. Because what he is basically saying in language that you and I would understand, trying to figure out why people act the way they do without understanding the presence of spirit and God in these people is impossible. Why people get sick, why some people accomplish while other people fail, why people do strange things. You can't determine the reason with that without understanding the existence inside of you of something above and beyond humankind, something supernatural. So he says the structure and the physiology of the brain furnish no explanation whatsoever of the psychic process. In other words, if you look at your brain, it's a brain. It doesn't say to you, this is the holy part here, this is where you communicate with God. It doesn't say that. It's just a mass of stuff. And so if the doctor, as I've said to you before, if we get the most eminent surgeon in the world and he takes your little brain and opens it up and cuts into it and looks, he will never find one idea. He'll never find one dream. He'll never find one fear. And yet they're all there, aren't they? Your ideas, your memories. Let's do something. Here you have in the middle of your head this thing, a brain, all electronic stuff. Okay, now I want you to do something. Think of a house that you lived in when you were a little child. Can you think of it? Now here's another thing. Listen deep inside of yourself. You do it too at home. And hear your mother's voice. Can you do it? How could you do this? I could even tell you, listen inside of yourself and hear Elvis Presley's voice. You could hear it. You can see him. Ain't nothing but a hound dog. How could you do this? How is this possible? And what about that house? Where did that come from? Where is it? I mean, is there a computer? I mean, how did you get that? Where did it roll up from? Where did it come from? And that's the point that he's talking about. There's nothing in your brain that will show you that that memory of that house is in there. But it's there anyhow, isn't it? There's nothing in your brain that will say that as you sit here, you start thinking and daydreaming and going off on trips while I'm doing all of this talk. But it happens, doesn't it? How? How does it happen? Where people make a big mistake, Jung says, is that the scientific people err because they say, there's no scientific basis for this belief. But as Jung says, the brain furnishes no explanation to the psychic process. And the psychic process means being sensitive to the supernatural, and you can't find it in the brain. But I'm telling you that a tremendously capable person of great intellectual ability, the preeminent psychoanalyst probably who ever lived in the history of the world, says it's there. Regardless of whether any doctor or any scientist or anybody can find it, it's there. He found it. He found, and as he said, much like Buddha said, I can't explain it, but it's there. That's why Shakyamuni Buddha, when he was about to try to set out on his ministry of teaching people how to overcome hurt and anguish, they said to him, you have to teach this. He says, it can't be taught. You can't teach nothingness. So they come upon him and say, you've got to, for the sake of the world, you've got to teach this. He says, all right, I will teach. And what I will do, I will teach people how to get there. But I can't teach what's there. And that's it. There is there. It is there. So then if you have all of the doctors and all of the scientists and everybody who say, look, there is no basis scientifically for this, then you go to the Bible. Let's say. Page 156 in those little Bibles, and in the New Testament, go to 1 Corinthians, okay? 1 Corinthians, and it's in page 156 of the New Testament, and I'm looking at 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Because here, you people have followed a Christian walk all of your life. You've gone to church, you've gone to different, whether you're Catholic or Protestant, whatever it is. You also have to see things that relate to that to make you feel comfortable and to give you some credibility if you're in some kind of a religious or spiritual entity that it agrees with what the Bible teaches. So, Carl Jung says it doesn't make any difference how wise or how much wisdom the people have that say it's not there. It's there anyhow. And so then in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 19, the Apostle Paul says, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and will bring to nothing the understanding of the prudent. Where's the wise? Where's the scribe? Where's the disputer of the world? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? So when you can turn around and say there's no scientific basis for this, this isn't possible. The Bible agrees with Carl Jung that says not only is it possible, it is. And so what are we calling all of this? What are we calling this psychic sensitivity to supernatural things? What it's called is Christ consciousness as we know it. Christ consciousness. Basically, and that's what it is. Christ consciousness. A manifestation of divine thought inside of you. Inside of you, there's a manifestation of divine thought. Now, Carl Jung here begins an evaluation that aligns him as a psychoanalyst with a deep, deep, deep spiritual idea. Now listen to what he says. Now listen very carefully to what he says, because this is important. This is a quote from him. Without consciousness, there would be no world. Did you hear this? Without consciousness, there would be no world, for the world exists as such only insofar as it is consciously reflected by a psyche. It only exists. And for instance, how could there be a beautiful sunset if there was nobody to see it? Think of that. There is nobody in the world to see anything. How could there be a beautiful sunset? We'd say there would be. No. It only can be if somebody can see it, or else it can't be. Can't exist unless somebody can see it. And so then, consciousness or perception is absolutely a requirement, see? Because unless the world is reflected in the consciousness or the psyche of a human being, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And he goes on. And this is what is really interesting of what he says. And very few people have ever been able to sit down with this man and challenge him on one word. And this is what he said. Consciousness is a precondition of being. You know what he just said? Consciousness is a precondition of being. In other words, there had to be consciousness before there can be people. Now, that is important to hear. It is not people that can create consciousness. Consciousness has to create people. An intelligence, a manifestation of a divine order, has to construct a human being. It's not the human being that can construct this intelligence or this divine order. So, precondition of being. There has to be a consciousness before there can be people. And so what he says is the psyche. Now, when we use that word psyche, we're talking about the soul or the mind. You know, this was what is within you. So what he says is the psyche, now listen to this, your mind, that inner being of you, that uniqueness that you are, is endowed with a dignity of a cosmic principle. You are endowed with a dignity of a cosmic principle because that holy place within you has been placed there by a supreme creative consciousness. Whoops. And look what he says. The carrier then, and that's you, of this consciousness, you and me, does not produce the psyche on his own, but is preformed by it and nourished by its gradual awakening during life. I don't know how it should be exciting to you as to the man whom we're listening to. This is a scientific genius of the mind telling you that, yes, God exists. And that he has proved it, and that all life can look at it and say, yes, it does. It's proving. What's the Bible say? In Genesis 1:2, it says there was darkness upon the face of the deep, the lower. And God said, let there be light. Let there be light. That was the firstborn of God, is light. God's firstborn. The first thing that came out of God was light. That's why Jesus is called the light of the world and the firstborn, because he represents the sun in the sky. But that's for another time. Right now, we're talking about this that comes from a higher dimension, from a cosmic dimension, and that finds itself as a little germ nesting deep inside of you and saying, find me, I'm here, waiting for you to go through the journey, as almost like after the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and lifting the lid on this magnificent treasure, which is inside of you, and there for you to be discovered, for it to be discovered by you. Look what it says in page 88 of your little Bibles, John chapter 1, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. John chapter 1 and verse 14, okay? John chapter 1 and verse 14. Look what it says. And the Word, now the Word is universal consciousness. Listen what was said. What's being said here? The Word, this is what Carl Jung was saying in brilliant terms of a scientific mind. But here's the way the Bible said it. And the Word, it's not a Bible. The Word is universal consciousness, was made flesh. It inhabited you and dwelt amongst us. That's what Jesus meant. At that time you will know I am in the Father, you in me, and I in you. There is a principle inside of you waiting to be touched, waiting to be discovered. And through your meditation, it comes alive. No other way but through your meditation. What did we say this morning? No other way. Here we sit, December, okay? The sun was born, begins its move out of the winter solstice. But all the trees in your yard, all the bushes in the fields are all gray and look sticks like they're dead. But when the sun rises up, as the burnt sun of the fire consumes the ram Aries, what will happen? The burnt offering will have taken place, and all of the trees will be born again. All of the little bushes will give forth roses. All of the pansies and the daisies and all of the flowers will spring up all over the place. And the world will be bathed in color. Why? Because the energy has risen upward to the Lamb. And in you, Aries, the Lamb, is the pineal gland of the brain. And when the energy, which is the sun, what's this called? Solar plexus, right here. the place of the sun. And when you allow that energy to rise out of the solstice, the winter solstice of your life, it will consume that which is the pineal gland, and then will come the springtime and the summer of your life. It can't happen any other way. Tell me, you sit here, you've been around, most of you have been around a few seasons. Have you ever seen a summer without a spring? Huh? Can it be? Can it happen? Have you ever seen in this northern hemisphere, have you ever seen a situation where you could have even a spring without a Christmas? Have you ever seen a beautiful rose bloom unless there has been the birth of the sun on December the 25th? It can't. If the sun does not make it up to Aries, there'll be no summer this year. But you know what? It will. That's automatic. This one isn't. This requires you to say yes and allow the sun to rise from the solar plexus up to the pineal gland of Aries, consume it, and then the summer will come. And doesn't make any difference what you have to do with it. You have nothing to do with it. What do you have to do with it? Hit the floor, kick your shoes off, and sit there until it happens. Meditation. It does it by itself. It doesn't require any assistance from any of us, no matter what you do. But it works, and that's what Carl Jung is talking about. This word, the universal consciousness, is made flesh. It's in you, waiting now for you to allow it to rise. So here then, we see why Jesus Christ says in Matthew 5:14, you are the light of the world. He didn't come down here and say, I am Jesus. If you believe me and kiss my ring, you'll be saved. He didn't say that. He didn't say, hey, look, I just got down from heaven, and I got some cards, and if you sign this card, you're a member of the Jesus Fan Club, and you will be saved. He didn't say that. How come he didn't say that you should walk an aisle and write this and say it and everything? He didn't say that. He didn't even say he was a big shot. He said, you're a big shot. He said, you're the light of the world. Do you know what he said? You are the light of the world. I have to scream this somewhere. He didn't say you were a fakakta sinner. He said, you're the light of the world. And everything depends on you. Remember, if there's no you, there's no sunset. If there's no you, there's no world. You are the light of the world because if the psyche within you, if that soul within you, see, right, wait a minute, listen to what I just told you. Look at this. If this thing, wow, if this thing that Carl Jung says has the consciousness of the creator of the universe which has settled within you, if that's important, how important must you be? If indeed it is dwelling in you, then you must be pretty important to be the one who is giving this seed of the universe a place to live. We have our little dog, Daisy. We learned last night that Daisy, before we got it, was kept out in a pen in the yard, was never allowed to come in the house. Now, even up to now, she'll never bark to come in because, hey, I don't know, maybe they changed their mind. When the leaves fell, she made a bed in the leaves thinking this thing may not last. She comes up and peeks in the window. But she comes in now. See, the door is always open. And, to watch her enjoying this love and the warmth and food and all these beautiful things, and she's turned into a young lady when she was just a mongrel little before. And say, what happens then when something beautiful is allowed to come in and you are receptive to it and open to it and realize its oneness with nature and all that is good, and then think of something magnificent as this. Here is this psychoanalyst Carl Jung saying that something far beyond the realms of thought of a human being is lodging within you, ready to be opened. That's your Christmas present. What a gift. And it's yours. It's yours. Because look, if the soul or the psyche must be granted a unique importance, so must you, because without you there is no soul. Without you there is no word, because the word was made flesh. Who's the heck's it going to dwell in if it's not you? Where is this thing? God. God is the word. Jesus is the word. Where is he going to live if there's no you? Where's he going to go? Nowhere to go. Nothing to live in. No one to be in. And how is this divine thing going to manifest itself? If not in you, it's not going to. How important are you? Get out of this stuff, this crap that you're a worthless sinner. That's not what the Bible said. It's not what Jesus said. It's not the way you were created. It's what they have said in order to control everything that you do. Because if you feel worthless, then you can be controlled by them because they'll save you. That's not the way it is. But look at something. There's people who say, well, you need God in your life. No more than he needs you. You don't need him any more than he needs you. Because where's he going to go if you're not here? Where's he going to live? Who's going to, how's going to, God bless you. Who's even going to say that? Unless you do. Who's going to read the Bible? Unless you do. Nobody. And let's just say everybody in the world disappeared. Then who knows there's a God? There is none. Because there's nobody here to look at him, just like the sunset. There's nobody here to mention the name. So then you begin to get into what this guy's talking about. God needs you because without you, there is no God. And without God, there is no you. There's no sunset without you. There's no God without you. That's why Jesus Christ said, you're the light of the world, because without you, there is no light. There is no God. It can't shine anywhere. Look at the world. Look at it. Killing each other, bombing each other, and singing Onward Christian Soldiers. I never liked that song. Onward Christian soul, fighting on to war. But they mean it. They ain't fooling around. They'll kill you for a minute if you don't agree. Where did I get? I dropped a quarter out of my pocket.
A quarter? Johnny's got a quarter.
Oh, in your pocket. But listen, watch what happens. You got a little bit excited here because you heard from Carl Jung that this thing called God is a seed inside of you waiting to be opened and to flower. You can be one with this universal consciousness which is in all people. But what happens? When you are consumed into the system or the state or religion, you lose this individuality. You are no longer the light of the world, right? What did Jesus say? Jesus said you can do better than he can. That's what he said. I mean, don't blame me. The man said that. That's what he said. He said, you can do better than him. And everybody is aghast when you say that. Why? Because you're so conditioned to be a sniveling, snotting, worthless sinner. You know? Here you are, made to believe that the God who insists that you love your enemies fries his. Right? His enemies go to hell. You got to love yours. Here you have been led to believe that you were to sit down and worship this Jesus and all of the things and pray to when Jesus Christ said, you can do better than me. Do you know how that elevates your stature? What are you going to do if all of a sudden you find people running around realizing that within them is the same power that Jesus had, and if they find within themselves this key, they can use it as he did? What's going to happen to the churches? What is going to happen to the church? Your attitude about the churches is going to be exactly the same as his because you're going to have his mind. And you know what his attitude about the churches were? There's not going to be one stone left standing on the other one. Let the whole thing crash. Go fuck out the whatever. Boom down and come. That's what his attitude. Jesus, what a beautiful church that is over there. He said, take a good look at it, Pete, because there's not going to be one rock left standing on the other one. That's what he said. You know why? Because he said God dwells in a temple not made with hands. And the only temples in the universe that are not made with hands are on the side of your head. Huh? So, you see, then you are special. You are the manifestation of God, of consciousness, and it can't be without you. If you don't go, it doesn't go. That's how important it is. Yet, the church allows you only so far as you acknowledge their dogmas and their doctrines and their directions. And when you surrender all of your God beauty to the collective category of the masses, what do you become? A participant, a member of the congregation. Is that something? You want to be a member of the congregation. Everybody gets up. You know, that's what they come down. Then they come down. Okay, everybody, stand. And they all stand. See, in this church, you won't get away with that. They won't do it. Everybody sit down, they'll all stand. But don't you ever see them? Let's all rise, and they all get up. Be seated, and they all sit down. That's what started to really destroy me. I don't want to get up. When they get up, I want to get down. When they get down, I want to get up because I don't want to do what you want to do. You don't want to do what I want to do. I used to tell, I did that. I was sitting with my overcoat on. They're all standing. I'm surrounded by people. And Joan would say, I can't. Why is that? Because, of this revolutionary attitude. But Jesus Christ had a revolutionary attitude. What did he do? Was he revolutionary? You can't pick corn on the Sabbath. That's the law. So he went to the cornfields. He didn't just go pick corn. He waited until the rabbis came along. He said, let me know when they show up. Peter said, here they come, here they come. Okay, watch this one, Pete. Why? Because he was a revolutionary. Because he's sticking it right here. He said, this means nothing. He walked in the same, he waited, and right after that he walked in the same church. And they said, here comes this long hair. What do you want? And there was a lame guy there. He said, hold your hand out. You can't heal people on that. Get out of here. Everything that they said you couldn't do, he did. And that's why I say to you, every book that you were told by the religious people that you shouldn't read, go get. Collect them. All of them, all of the swamis and gurus and all of the astrology, pick them all off and read them. Have them around your house when they come to visit. I'm just reading this one by Swami Banyanahana. Really does a number on them. But you know what it does? It makes you say, you know why John got beat up tonight? Because he's an individual. He doesn't think like the mob. People can't deal with that unless you think the way they do. But it's a new age, and as you can see, people are not doing that anymore. Hey, look what it says in, we're almost done here, but look what it says here in the book of Jeremiah on page 628 of the Old Testament. The book of Jeremiah. I want you to see something as where all this comes from. Book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah chapter 6, okay? And if you're there on page 628, all right, in the Old Testament, Jeremiah chapter 6. I'm trying to get you into trouble. I'm desperately trying to get you into trouble. Then you'll start having fun in this life. You won't be bored anymore because they'll all be saying things about you. You'll be running around. And, oh, boy. It's really great to get them all upset. Really is. Especially when you're accomplishing something good for the universe. Jeremiah 6, look what it says in chapter 17. Also I set watchmen over you, saying, hearken to the sound of the trumpet. You know what the trumpet is in mysticism? The trumpet in mysticism, well, you know what a trumpet is. A trumpet is something you blow in. The breath activates it. The breath is spirit. The spirit breathes into the trumpet, and it makes music. It makes harmony. So what's being said here, I said, hearken to that impulse within you, which is spirit breath, which brings harmony to your life. Hearken to the sound of the trumpet. But they said, we will not hearken. We will not listen. And the only place that the trumpet blows is within you. The inner impulse is where the trumpet blows. But they said, we will not. So who took up your preconditioning consciousness and destroyed it? We had this morning. It was interesting because we had the same scripture this morning. And I always like to see the looks on people's faces when they see it. And you're right there in Jeremiah. You're right there in Jeremiah chapter 6. Go over to Jeremiah chapter 12. It's only a couple of pages from there. Go over to Jeremiah chapter 12 and see who the culprits are. Who was it that took your preconditioning? Who was it that took your preforming? Who was it that took that magnificent essence of consciousness out of you and got you conditioned to think like everybody else, that we're all a bunch of worthless sinners, that we're all going to have to sit in this world until it rots, until we go to some sweet by and by in some planet somewhere? Who was it that did it? It says in Jeremiah chapter 12 and verse 10, many pastors have destroyed my vineyard. They have trodden my portion underfoot. They have made my pleasant portion a desolate wilderness. Do you know what the pleasant portion is? The right hemisphere of your brain. Do you know what it is to most people? A desolate wilderness. Did you ever hear God speaking, or did you ever hear that famous line from Revelation, the abomination of desolation? You know what the abomination of desolation is? The horror of having the right hemisphere of the brain desolate. The horror of having the right hemisphere of the brain desolate. Look what it says in verse 11. They have made it desolate, and being desolate it mourns unto me. The whole land is made desolate, because no man lays it to heart. Ask yourself sometime, how many, and especially before you ever come in, how many hours, how many minutes did you ever put into meditation? How many minutes do you put into meditation now? Instead of trying to figure this thing out. And how much time have you spent reading this Bible literally when the whole Bible says it's not literal? When the whole Bible says it's symbolic, when the whole Bible says it's allegorical. How many times have you spent reading it literally? And Carl Jung says that the development of self requires a significance whose full implications have hardly begun to be appreciated. Listen to this one very carefully. Because too much attention to external religion blocks the way to immediate inner experience. Did you hear what he said? Too much attention to external religion blocks the way to immediate inner experience. It's important to hear. And so then, what's the fault of that? Where does it come from? Who's responsible for that? You just heard that Jeremiah say many pastors have destroyed the vineyard. Just as we're wrapping this up, go to page 24 in the New Testament. Take a look at what Jesus says in Matthew 23. Matthew 23, verse 13. Take a look at it. See with your own eyes, as you've just seen about the pastors. Take a look at this as Jesus addresses the church people, as Jesus addresses the religious people. Matthew 23, and look at verse 13. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees. You know what scribes are? People who write the Bible. Pharisees are religious people. And he says, woe unto you, hypocrites. You're a bunch of actors. And look what he says. For you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. You neither go in yourselves, neither do you allow them in that are entering in. Where has he said the kingdom is? The kingdom is within you. And he's saying to the religious people, you don't go in there. And you prevent other people. The same thing they do today. Isn't it the religious people, isn't it the mainline Christian religious people today who tell you it's evil to enter in yourself, it's evil to practice meditation, it's evil to seek within the mind? Sure they do. They try to stop you from entering in. And the same thing that Jesus was talking about. And Jung says that the only reason that the religious have not destroyed the consciousness altogether is because the individual psyche yearns for its home. That's what's happening today. That's why people all of a sudden, doesn't make any difference what the religious people say. Doesn't make any difference what religion says. There is a yearning for that part of you to rise above all of the thoughts of religion and enter within and be touched by that which is the divine presence. That's what's happened. Why is it? Can anybody celebrate? Can anybody say anything that you've sat through an absolute movement of what we call God in the affairs of men? What happened to the wall in Berlin? What happened to the communism in Russia? What happened to South Africa? What happened to Nelson Mandela? What's going on with the North Koreans and the South Koreans? What's going on with the Palestinians and the Jews sitting down and all these? What's happening with all of the hostages? What's happening all over the world? Reporters say, what's going on? How can this possibly be? Nobody knows. You should know. You should know that there is an intervention in the minds of people by this magnificence which you call God. It is a new age. Isn't it somewhat coincidental to you that all of this happens at the time when Uranus is moving into Aquarius? Isn't it somewhat coincidental to you that all of this happens when you are about to celebrate the cosmic change in the universe that is happening for the first time in 2,600 years? And don't you understand that what you're seeing is just the tip of the iceberg? And when we sit and meet here, if we do a year from now, you won't even know this world that you know now. What do you think of the people in Russia? Do you think they even know what hit them? What happened? Where did it all go? Where's the Kremlin? Where's the flag? Where's the hammer and sickle? It doesn't exist. All of it's gone. And that's nothing compared to what you're going to see in 1992. And it's all of this, what he's talking about. Stop reading this thing. Close the thing. And look at yourself, and look at a tree, and look at a dolphin. Look within yourself and say, it is nature that you've got to come to the center with. Because you can read this and you can study it and I can talk, and that's not going to get you 1 inch closer, because as he says right here, you've got to have an immediate inner experience. Or it's all, you're going to go to a restaurant and read the menu. That's what they do in Bible studies. They study it. I get sick. They're coming every Wednesday. We're going to have a Bible study. It's like going to every restaurant and say, we're going to study the menu there. What good is it unless you eat the food? What good is it unless you do something about it? Do you think all of this stuff is written here so you can just read it until you drop dead? That's what people do. They read the Bible for 80 years and they drop dead with a Bible in their lap. They have never understood or experienced what it means to do it. You got to do it. And that's what you have to do, and you have an opportunity to do it. And it's so easy to do it. To practice the single eye and to enter in. And it says in Romans, I'll make it go there because I'm done, but it says in Romans 8:22, for we know that the whole creation groans and travails in pain. Even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption. Isn't that interesting? Carl Jung just said that the only reason religion has not been able to destroy your consciousness is because inside of your individual psyche there is a yearning for it to go home. He says that, and the Apostle Paul says, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body. That's what the moving from the solar plexus up to the pineal is. It's the prodigal son returning to home. It's Jesus' resurrection. It's the ascension. It's all of these things, and it happens within inside of you when you allow it. I'm going to read you, as I finish this statement by Carl Jung, and that'll be it. Carl Jung says that religious devaluation of the psyche and other resistance to enlightenment is based on fear and discoveries that might be made in the realm of the unconscious. Do you understand? People who know doggone well what's going to happen when you discover this. You're no longer going to follow a crowd. You're going to follow yourself. I don't want you to follow. I don't have anything to prove to you. I don't have to prove nothing to you. And you don't have to prove anything to me. You're a special, individual person. You come and go as you please. There's no members in this place. But you, once you find this light, will be guided. It's just like there's a fellow that comes here once in a while, Rich Hayes, was a pilot for Pan Am until they just laid him all off, flies these big 747s. And Rich would say, sometimes when you're flying these big things through a storm, you turn on that beacon and there it is. Boop, boop, and you follow that beacon. And that beacon brings you right in, and all of a sudden there's the air. There's the runway. When you put that big thing down on the ground, you haven't seen a thing. You never have seen a light. But you follow that beacon. And inside of you, there's a beacon. And as I've told you time and time again, when that beacon starts to sound in that goose up in Canada, and it starts to lift its wings to migrate, it never flies it in the wrong direction. It never takes it to the wrong place. It always brings it down right in the... And that beacon is yearning to go off. There's a beacon inside of you. That's what Jesus calls a single eye. And if you activate that beacon, it will bring you right to where you should be in your life. And the horrible part of this is we've never been allowed to even know that there's a beacon within us. Never been allowed to know it. Krishna knew about it. Buddha knew about it. The ancients knew about it. But our sophisticates of today and our religious people of today, what we're talking about is the magnificence which within you. And what do we take for religion? These hamburgers on television with their pompadours and their suits and all of this stuff telling you to send $1,000 to get your kid healed. And you can use MasterCard or Visa. And this we accept this as religion. Brothers in Christ. I don't know. I cannot understand how we have accepted this stuff and seen the world disintegrated, destroyed. Children. You imagine raising little children to think there's a devil running around, to think there are demons running around, to think that there's a hell somewhere that God throws bad people. This is the guy who tells you to forgive 7 times 70. He's going to throw you in hell, and he's got demons to turn you over to make sure you're done. And we're teaching little kids this. And you're wondering why they're whacked out and they're all on drugs by the time they're 17 years old. What would you do? It's horrible. Absolutely horrible. And that's what we've done. So finally, Carl Jung says, the fear of the unconscious psyche. Listen to this now. Just listen, it's over. The fear of the unconscious psyche is the gravest obstacle to self-knowledge and understanding in the world. And who put the fear in your head that there's something wrong with it? Often the fear is so great that one does not admit it even to oneself. And he winds up with this statement: here is a question that every religious person should consider very seriously. He might get an illuminating answer. I'll leave that with you. Well, thank you very much for sharing this time with us on the work of Carl Jung. And it's just a real privilege to be able to share such insights of people. But not only to be able to share the insights of a Carl Jung, but to be able to show you the relevancy of the Bible and the relevancy of these things to the teachings of Jesus Christ and the rest. That's what's important about it. And especially in this age when people are being freed from the bondages of religion, the money, the guilt, the fear, and all of those things which have hurt so many. Finally now realizing Jesus Christ had no part in any of that stuff, but he has part only inside of you, and that your coming to grips with that eternal flame within you will light up now your pathway to nirvana. Light up your pathway, as it says, to Orion, that great electrical grid in the universe where all life will filter out and filter in. It's an amazing time, so be a part of it. When you're done with